I can hear you.
Trump is now president of the United States.
Why are men and boys struggling? And what should we do about it?
In a world of chaos and our attention is being pulled in different directions, the Pursuing Truth podcast is seeking the solution by having authentic conversations that are aimed to impact culture.
Yes, we are back with another episode on the Pursuing Truth podcast. Hello and welcome back to the Pursuing Truth podcast. I am your host, Levi Brickley. You guys just missed out on I guess a little bit of a funny part because Ryan's over here laughing. How you doing, buddy?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing good. You know, see right there, that's the energy I want when you get behind the microphone and start talking. You know, so today we're going to talk about the judgment that many of us Christians face, living out your faith in a world which rejects the truth. And it is a challenge for many of us who try to orient ourselves in a way of obedience towards the Lord. It's a confliction that each one of us are faced within our conscience to battle our sins and to remain in obedience to Christ. One of the key elements of being a Christian is it doesn't make you perfect. It just makes you, this is going to be a little bit rough, but perfect in the sight of the Lord because Jesus paid our debts through being on the cross, dying and being resurrected. We were going to talk about a different subject, but we had a guest, and unfortunately, things didn't work out, so we're not going to be able to have that discussion this week. We hope to have it next week. It's really controversial, and I want it to be received really well for the listeners. It can lead to much controversy within the church because it is a very touchy subject, and hopefully you guys will return for that episode that we will do in the future. But the reason why we were talking about judgment is because Ryan came up with this idea like, hey, what are we going to talk about? Like, we got last minute here. So we don't have very much scripture to run through here. We're just going to kind of chit chat and talk about some of our experiences. I know that I've experienced it. Ryan, why did this come to mind as something that you wanted to talk about?
Throughout this past week, I was talking to a coworker that used to believe in God, and he ended up not believing in God anymore because of hypocrites. And I don't know, it's just been running through my brain a lot lately.
Did he give some specific examples?
No, I didn't really ask him though.
I mean, I understand that though. I mean, if we're not a model of Christ, we're not modeling him in our life, people will look at us and be like, well, I don't want to be like that guy. I don't want to be a hypocrite. I don't want to be looked at as a liar. Say I stake my life on this, but in reality, I live a totally different lifestyle. I don't want to be perceived that way.
Yeah.
Now, in the past, I have. Like back in the day, man, we used to hop on TikTok. We used to chug beers. Every what was it, like every 1,000 likes we would
beer
bong a beer. Yeah. I mean, and then here I was, I'm making Christian content as well. And I can see two things through that lens. One, there were some comments like, oh, you know, he claims to be a Christian, but he's living his life in the public eye in this way on TikTok, chugging beer. And the other way was, again, going back to that first statement I made that, well, I don't want to be like that guy. He's a liar. And I still struggle with sin. It's not like it went away. It's not like, you know, you give your life to Christ and everything's over on your battles with sin.
One of my biggest struggles, and something that I've thought about since having that conversation with my coworker, is that majority of days they don't hear about God. Like, if they don't believe in him, they're not going to like do any research on him. It's probably not going to show up on their feed because they don't talk about it, or they don't like look into it or anything like that. And one of my biggest struggles is I do have a potty mouth on me, and I do need to work on that. I need to hold my tongue a lot more than I do. Mm-hmm. And because there are people out there that they don't have God in their life, and the only time they're going to hear about God is if you talk about him, or, you know, maybe somebody else. But I mean, me doing my part as a Christian, being able to talk about God and just like how he's worked in my life and everything like that, and maybe plant a seed.
Yeah, because like what's the purpose that Jesus gives us? Go into the world and make disciples. That means that we're an extension, we're a representation of him. We make disciples for him. Because why does God want that, though? Why does God want relationship with people?
He saved us.
He created us. I mean, when you think about a painting, you know, you created that. There's a sense of pride, a sense of love, a sense of joy that you had when you were painting it. And it brought out the beauty. And that beauty is our lives. And Jesus wants to be involved with us. He wants to walk alongside us. He wants us to draw nearer to him instead of going our own ways. And we know from previous episodes that we've talked about this, what happens when we go the opposite direction of God is we lose conscience. We lose our convictions because we violated our conscience so much. And so it's easy to deceive ourselves into justifying the sin that each one of us commit. And I know, like, I'm battling that even more. It's like I had the conversation a couple weeks ago that I wasn't going to do X, Y, and Z after that men's conference. And the last couple weeks, it's like Satan's like, "Hey, I'm going to test that. I'm going to check you for that."
And whenever you're not in the word and everything like that, that's whenever the devil strikes even harder than ever. And it's even harder to get back into the word of God whenever you're out of it for so long, because you're getting so used to the sin that you're living in.
And Ephesians chapter 5 says that the word is the sword. This is the way we compete against the schemes of the devil. And I'm not perfect, you know. I fail all the time. It just makes me think of I wanted to save this for next week's episode. Like I said, we had another episode planned. So I have some stuff that I had been working on, some things that were fuming up and ready to share on the podcast. And this was one thing that I wanted to share about was the golden rule. What is the golden rule for Christians?
To treat everybody like how you'd want to be treated.
Exactly. But that's a fallacy. That's a lie. Is it a high commandment? Absolutely. But is it the golden rule? No, it's not. In fact, in Matthew chapter 7, verse 12, it says, "So in everything you do, do to others what you would have them do to you, for this sums up the law and the prophets." So that's where the golden rule comes from. But you flip over to Matthew chapter 22, 37 through 39, Jesus replied and said, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. Now hear this. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself." So very much like that Matthew 7:12 verse. But there's a significant difference here. And I want to make this distinction that the first and number one command that we have as Christians is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. The second is to love people.
And that's where it kind of goes in with another Bible verse, and I wish I could remember it on the top of my head. But where it says that if you have the love of God in you and you hate your brother, then you're a liar.
Oh, yeah. That was in the sermon this week.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think there's this other element to this verse as well, that through the love of the Lord, your love for the Lord, your admiration for him, your pursuit towards him, your relationship with him, you overflow into love for others. And this is one of the things that I think a lot of churches, not churches in general, I don't want to say, oh, you know, First Southern Baptist Church up the street or the Church of the Nazarene or this or that. Christianity as a whole, I believe, has slipped up a little bit here because we made the commandment to love others as ourselves. We made that the commandment. And in doing so, we rely so much on our flesh, like, oh, well, I want to be loved this way, therefore I'm going to go out and love this way. But when we put our full soul, mind, and heart into God, we overflow with the love that he's commanded us to love other people with. He gives us the tool. But one of the schemes of the devil is to redefine what love is. What would you say are some definitions that the world has for love today?
It all starts with the heart and following their heart. If their heart tells them to get with this girl or this just feels right. Mm-hmm. And in the Bible, it clearly says your heart is deceitful.
Yeah.
And so it's just a twist on words, really.
Yeah. Well, and that's a scheme of the devil's to play words like that. And obviously this is controversial, but like I even remember like being a kid and you would have a teacher or somebody, you know, that was guiding you, leading you in a certain direction would say something along the lines of, just follow your heart. Just follow your heart. And I followed my heart. And let me tell you where it led. A lot of pain.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some times, Ryan, that you followed your heart.
There has been plenty of times in relationships I followed my heart, followed lust behind it, just did everything not according to God and what he wanted for me. And obviously that's why they didn't work out. And it definitely showed me over time with the relationships. I would say, I'm trying to think of some other times. What about you?
For me, I had got out of a 2.5-year relationship. And at the time, I didn't know this at the time, but I couldn't be alone. I couldn't sit with myself and like be okay. And so I needed somebody else to kind of round over that hard edge of being alone. And so I skipped into a relationship and then another relationship.
And that's the worst thing you could do.
Exactly. But guess what I was doing? I was following my heart.
Yeah.
I was following my emotions because my emotions, I wanted to resist that feeling of loneliness and being alone. And I needed somebody. And it was almost like, I could just accept anybody. Or, you know what? She has some qualities that I like. She may not have everything, but for now, in the temporary, this will suffice. And that was a lie. Because not only did I hurt myself in the long run, I hurt her. And sometimes the path to true joy is through what? Suffering. And that's not something that we talk about in today's culture. In fact, today's culture says, well, the reason for life is to pursue happiness. But that's just a temporary fulfillment. What I want is eternal fulfillment. That is joy. And the path to joy is sometimes through suffering. And what I had to learn through being alone after that last relationship 4.5 years ago was that I'm okay with me. I'm okay with what God has called me to be. And I'm okay where he's leading me to go. And if that means at this temporary moment that I'm alone in the process, I will allow God to mold my heart into the man he's called me to be instead of me being focused on finding somebody to fill that void. God fills the void. Mm-hmm. And you know what? Like, I feel so much better than I have my whole entire life. It's funny because like people are like, oh, you turned 30 years old and like it's like the greatest years of your life. And I can honestly see why. When you're 20, you're like the chisel is on you and the hammer just keeps hitting you because you're learning. You can possess knowledge at 20. And I'm not going to say that there aren't knowledgeable and wise 20-year-olds, because there absolutely are. I claim myself to be wise at 20, but if I reflect back on myself, I was not wise at all. I was kind of foolish. I was on the level of being an idiot, because I had accepted that I knew what was best, you know. And what I did in that process was, because I was filling these voids, guess who I was misrepresenting?
God.
I was misrepresenting God. I wasn't being the man that he called me to be, because I was filling the void to be in a relationship. I hurt her. And you know what we see often as a result of this? The war of the sexes. Men and women in contention with one another. And I believe that primarily the reason for that is because of a bad relationship. I mean, we used to say AWAB is an acronym. Maybe you can figure out what that means for yourself, because I'm not going to say it on the podcast.
We definitely do not live by that anymore.
No, we
used
don't.
to, and that's whenever we were like in a dark place, and our relationship with God, we always believed in God, but we didn't necessarily follow his word at that time.
Yeah. And then on the reverse is women saying, well, all men are cheaters.
And dogs.
And all men are dogs. And this is a result. This is an outward expression of an inward hurt from a relationship that was once there. And it's a hardening of the heart, and it's bitterness that's being expressed. And instead of looking at one another as brothers and sisters in Christ, we put up these walls and box people in. And just in this example, people are boxing in men and women. And we're all fallen. We're all sinners. We've all failed. And that's part of the process. You know?
All right, so to kind of bring it back in a little bit, I'm going to ask you this. Have you or anybody that you've ever talked to ever experienced feeling judged inside the church, where they like were open to try out church for their first time, and the moment they went in, they just instantly got like weird looks and everything just by their appearance and everything?
I can think of one person close to me that has, in their opinion, received some of that judgment. Obviously, I wasn't there, so I'm going to give a lot of grace in that. I hear a lot of discussion about it, but I've been with a body of believers, and I've been in Bible studies, and what I've found is the most genuine people.
Yeah, same here. I've never had that experience, but I didn't know if you've ever experienced it in your life.
I would say I've experienced that more so from lukewarm Christians. The way that they perceive me. I've experienced it in that I blog a lot. You know this. Like I write on Facebook. If you guys want to friend me on Facebook, like I'll accept your friend request. It's just Levi Brickley. I think I'm the only one in the world, so you're not going to find another. But you know, I write a lot, and the things I write about are not soft hand approach to Christianity. It's not a soft hand approach to the world either. One of the things that I talk about often is the lie of empathy, that this is another way that the world has redefined love, and I'm going to tie all this in, is love is to be empathetic and to really be in oneness with everybody and accept them and all their flaws and all this and that. And what they do is they compromise truth. And I know the compromising of truth is completely absent of love. And so the point of empathy is that we have empathy for people who either legitimately cannot help themselves, or two, we have discernment to see if somebody needs to take responsibility, and we gently and kindly lead them towards the path that's going to lead to what they desire and fulfillment and eternity with Jesus. And so what I've experienced as a result of talking about those things is, who's this guy? Like, why does he think that he has the right to talk about that? And really, it's just an outward expression of my love for the Lord and how he's working on me. It's not that I think that I'm always right. I mean, obviously, I just called myself an idiot and foolish younger. And when I was younger, and I would say I'm probably going to feel that way when I'm 40, thinking back to when I was 30. I'm going to listen to this episode 10 years from now, and I'm going to be like, I would have said that a little bit different.
That is like the, I don't know, quote that we heard a few weeks ago, that we're just imperfect people telling other imperfect people about a perfect God.
Exactly. And one of the challenges here is that although I'm a representation of Christ, I am not Christ. And so when you talked about your coworker who said, well, there were all these hypocrites, that's making a judgment call on the people that are engaging this way. That's not a judgment call on God.
No, yeah, no.
And so like, it's like your responsibility, even as an unbeliever, not your what is best for you as an unbeliever is to dig into a relationship with God and discover who he is, instead of defining God based off of other people. Because that's what a lot of people do. And like, it just leads to a bunch of sadness and hurt. And obviously there's the deconstruction and like, well, this is all I saw. And it's unfortunate. And so what are the things that we're called to do as Christians? How do we make that change in the church? How do we make that change? And it starts on an individual level. It's not as a whole, because you can't control the whole. You can you're only responsible for you. So how do you love people the way that Christ has called us to love people? The greatest representation is to get real clear on the definition of love. Mm-hmm. Get really, dig into this. And if you don't understand a word and its depth, so like kindness, if you don't understand, let me just read the verse because I got it right here. Love is patient, love is kind. It does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud, it does not dishonor others, it is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered, it keeps no records of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices in the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, and always preserves. So let's break each one of those down. What does patience mean? Waiting. It's a sense of waiting. I would agree. I think it's a little bit deeper than just simply waiting. It's like, I know that there can be this outcome and I'm not going to get distracted by all these other things that could lead me astray. I know that there's something good coming. So I'm going to remain in my wait. I'm going to wait until that comes. It's a process. It's something that's lived out. What does kindness mean? To be kind.
Be nice and caring for others.
Yes. I would add to it, though, the concept of kindness is not niceness. In fact, I would almost argue that they're polar opposites, but this is where the lie comes in. You can be nice and be loving, but niceness has no backbone. Kindness knows the truth. Kindness still remains true. It's like, I can understand where you're coming from, but I'm not going to compromise into what lie you've said. So a great example of this that's just very black and white, and people aren't going to like this, but it's black and white. It's homosexuality, sex before marriage, it's living together before marriage. It's all the sexual sins that culture has accepted, and that's from a place of niceness. We're going to be nice even though we don't agree with the lifestyle. Like, we'll almost like sit there and clap for them, and I'm happy that you're happy. But kindness is actually in a gentle way leading towards the truth without compromising it. Whereas niceness would just compromise it. It'd just go your own way, enjoy whatever. So what does boasting mean?
Boasting means like bragging.
Yeah, like look
Prideful.
at me. I'm great. Look at all the things that I've done. All you peasants haven't achieved in your life. That's boasting. Which pride, it is not proud. Being prideful goes into that as well. Like, and one of the ways, like, this is a battle that each one of us must fight, because the fall of mankind was pride. And it was like, I want more knowledge. I want, the temptation of the tree, basically, which was, that they would receive knowledge. And we live in a culture, much like we talked about with the Dower Wolf down in Dallas, how we created a mutation to bring back a animal that had been extinct for 13,000 years.
Trying to play God.
Could you imagine being that scientist that did that? Oh yeah, look at what I did. I get to play. They're not saying this, obviously, because it's in the name of science, but they're like, look at what I did to bring back creation. It's pride. It's pride. And the fall of man is pride. It does not dishonor others. Whew. One of the things that I've seen in a lot of conversations, I mean, between me and other people, is looking at somebody who's sitting across. I mean, if Ryan and I were in an argument right now, and Ryan used all of the dirty, nitty-gritty things that I have done and used it against me, and was angry, was saying things that he knew would hurt me, I would say that probably goes more in line with the anger, not so much dishonoring others. Dishonoring others would be like speaking poorly about you. It's not self-seeking.
That's another one that's hard for not just me, but many people.
Exactly. Because it's not selfish. You don't get to be selfish when it comes to the biblical definition of love. Look, Jesus Christ came here, a perfect man, and was slaughtered by people. Not because he had to, but because this was a prophecy, this was a promise, this was a desire for God to be in relationship with his creation. But I've said this before, and I had to do a deep analysis of it. And I think I'm still taking the stance that perfection, and I'm going to add to this, perfection cannot be in the presence of imperfection. Because what happened to Jesus? Although he was perfect, imperfection killed him. Right? Mm-hmm. And so the reason why God had to send Jesus, now this is a little bit theological here, but the reason why God had to send Jesus to die in our place was so that he could see us as his son, as perfect. Because then we can be in his presence. So perfection can be with perfection. Because imperfection and perfection can't be together. So we covered angered. It keeps no records of wrongs. There we go. That's what that conversation was about when I was talking about not dishonoring others. You bring all these things against me, all the wrongs, all the dirty, nasty, nitty gritty things that you know are going to hurt me. That's not loving. This is pretty much the essence of the podcast. This is the reason why I show up. This is the reason why I started it to some degree. There were some selfish reasons in it at the beginning. But the reason why I resist the times when I feel like I don't want to do this, but I still show up to do this, is love does not delight in evil, but rejoices in the truth. People look at my social media accounts and they come up to me and they talk to me. Oh, look at that, blah, blah, blah. I'm very humble about it. Very, very humble about it. Now, you may not see this because I get excited about when things pop off and this and that because you've been in the journey with me. But like outside people, like I just had an officer come up to me. Like I work in private security, and so I work closely with law enforcement frequently. And I had an officer come up to me and he's like, "Whoa, dude, like you came across my TikTok feed and I was shocked when I looked at your page and saw how many followers you have." Yeah, man, I just don't talk about it, honestly. I just don't. But the reason for that is because this is a blessing that God has given me to use to glorify Him. And if I, for a moment, start thinking about how great it is for me to have that, I begin to become self-indulged in the way I carry myself out on using social media. And I don't want to do that because what I see in this world of social media is darkness. I don't see much light. I don't see much hope. I don't see much purpose. I don't see much kindness. I don't see much love. And I ultimately don't see much truth or even the pursuit of it. And that's the reason why I run the podcast, is because I want to know truth, not only for myself, but I know through understanding truth and what God's word says about things and having a biblical worldview, it allows us to orient ourselves in a way that glorifies Him and to go out into the world and to make disciples. And I'm just a tool in that toolbox that God is using, and I'm honored to do that. And it's a humbling experience for me. But at the end of the day, love does not compromise truth. And what is truth? There's two types of truths. There's subjective and objective. Objective is absolute, and subjective is my thoughts, my feelings, my wants, my desires, my perception, things like that. That's not absolute truth. Now, for you as an individual, in the way you're experiencing life, it feels as absolute truth for you. Presently, it's subjective and it changes over time as you grow. Unless you're just stagnant and stubborn, you will evolve, and your thoughts and how you perceive things will change over time and through new experiences. Much like when you and I went on a trip to Dallas, you were shut off to it. Like, no, I don't want to do that. And now next month, you're going to take a solo flight for the very first time. You've never even been in a plane. You're going to take a solo flight down to the Southeast. And it's just like, man, like you get to experience some of the openness to that experience. And how often do we do that where like we don't open ourselves up to that experience and then like put ourselves in a position where we get to experience the joy of getting to go do those things?
Yeah, I definitely held myself back from the experience of being able to like to travel and everything.
Love always protects. It always protects. Like it protects the weak, protects the strong. But what does it mean to protect spiritually? See, this is the calling of men. Hello? To instruct your children and teach them in the way of the Lord. You protect from the ideologies of the outside world, these subjective truths that we were just talking about. But you want to protect against the subjective truths so that there is an absolute, a foundation in a children's life for them to build a house on. Trees, when they're planted, they initially start down and then they come up because they're establishing their roots. That's what we are called to do, is to plant the seed for our children so that they establish their roots and then grow outwardly and expose themselves to the world with the roots that hold them in place, that keeps them from blowing through the ideologies of culture and society, but keeps them held down, keeps them secure. And so that's an aspect of protection, is to do that. Now, One thing that we must understand as we talk about these things is that these things have to all encompass each other. Look, you don't get to protect by being domineering, which would be the opposite of kindness, right? You don't get to protect by saying, I know it all. Look at how great I am. That's boasting. That's pride. You don't get to say, I'm better than you because I'm doing these things. That's dishonoring others. You don't get to say, well, I'm doing this because I want to make $100,000 on a podcast. Well, that's self-seeking. If you just want the $100,000 just because, and I'm using me as an example here, but if I wanted to go on social media and make hundreds of thousands of dollars just to fulfill my hedonistic pleasures, which is like buying the car, buying the house, developing the 401k, there's nothing wrong with having money, but it's a gift from God to steward. And it's not easily angered. You can't be protecting and be domineering through your anger, like saying you must do what I'm telling you to do. Because I see this with a lot of Christians, man. Oh, I just got a thought in my mind to somebody. And it just, even just that, I'm like, oh, man, because it makes me really angry. You come in the name of the Lord, yet you are domineering to others. You're disruptive to the inner peace that they may have through your anger. You don't guide them. You aren't kind to them. You aren't joyful with them. You aren't willing to sit with them in their challenges. But you come in and you make commands in the name of the Lord. That's not loving. Hello. So don't be that to your wives. Have an ear to listen. Seek understanding amongst one. Paul talks about that all the time. Seek understanding amongst one another. Look, if you have a disagreement, if there's a phrase that you said, I'll often say phrases that get mistaken. For me, I recognize that I'm saying things that are really hard for people to take initially. So I understand that when I misperceive something, I need to be really humble and ask them, what exactly did you mean by that? Because I didn't understand.
Well, there's a Bible verse that talks about confronting someone, about what you're seeing that they're doing wrong. And I cannot think of the exact words or the exact verse, but it talks about confronting them. And then if that doesn't go over well, confront the church.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It always trusts, always hopes, and always preserves. It's unwavering. It doesn't change. But remember, you're loving through your overflow for Christ. The first, number one commandment is not to love others. It's to love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, and soul.
And what is love?
All those things.
That, most of all, God.
Yep.
God is love.
Mm-hmm. He defines it. Because think about this world, man. Dude, it's really, 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 really interesting to me. Looking, the philosophical perspective of life is like the devil on the shoulder and the angel on your shoulder. Yeah. That's a really good depiction of the way life really is because there's this competition that's going on that's beyond you.
Well, really what it is your flesh and spirit.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and then that's expressed outwardly towards how one another treat each other. Right. And we're in this battle, constantly. But in heaven, there isn't that battle. In hell, there isn't that battle. All the bad things of life are in hell. You won't recognize any of your loved ones there. I genuinely believe that. You won't recognize any of your loved ones in hell. you won't experience absolutely any love. You won't experience absolutely any pleasure. So all the things that you're chasing here today with pleasure and possessions.
It does say, though, that in hell you will remember your loved ones.
You will.
And like your past life and everything like that, or if that's what you want to call it, past life.
But you won't get to be with them.
But yeah, you don't want to be with them. And that's ultimately what hell is being separated from God, being separated from love.
Separated from people that you love. Separated from God. Like, and like this is the play, right? This is the play on every person's life before they come to Christ. Do you choose to submit? Do you choose to offer up your body, your life, your possessions, your future as a living sacrifice to Jesus Christ?
Being dead to yourself.
Being dead to yourself? Or do you choose to continue to go your own way and try and figure it out as you go? Like, I know for an atheist or an agnostic that's listening to this right now, it'd be like, like, okay, I'm shutting it off, like pencils in my ears, or nails on a chalkboard. Because it's almost like, why is he being so confident with this, And I'm confident because of my experience with my relationship with Jesus Christ. And honestly, I just want you to experience that too. Another element to this is, what does Jesus say? I am the way, the truth, and the life. Nobody comes to the Father except through me. So waging on these worldly religions that feel good, it's all about self-admiration. Like when you look at, like, specifically from my understanding, now I could be wrong here. Send me a message if I'm wrong. I'm always open. But for Buddhists, it's like discovering the higher self, in your spirituality, whatever you want to say that is. That sounds like I'm just welcoming in a spiritual world that I don't want to be a part of.
That, and it's all about self.
It's all about self. It's all about me feeling good. When coming to Christ is not about me feeling good. I get to feel good as a result of living out through obedience, the calling and the purpose he has in my life. I get to experience a ton of joys.
He tells us in the Bible that following Jesus isn't going to be easy. You're going to go through trials and tribulations and everything like that. It's not easy. And so I think that's a big misunderstanding to some people that don't believe in God, but they know about God. And they think, oh, well, these Christians think they're like these perfect people. And there's nothing wrong in their life. Like growing up, I told you last week or 2 weeks ago that I saw pastors as like perfect people whenever I was little. And now that I'm older, I realize like there is no perfect person. And they crucified the only perfect person in this world.
Yep. I remember thinking that too. He's a pastor. He must not struggle with the things I struggle with.
Yeah.
That's a lie. And not only is it a lie that I'm accepting at that time, but I recognize now that it's a lie from Satan himself. Because what that means is I have to achieve a sense of worthiness for myself to approach that pastor. Now think about that in the Catholic Church, the way there's so much admiration with the Pope, with the cardinals, with the priest. It's this idea, and I'm not saying all of them are this way, but it's the dangers of the way the church itself is structured, is like, that can be a real thing. Like I feel unworthy to even be in the presence of this Pope, when the reality is the Pope's an imperfect person too. Oh man, that's controversial, isn't it? Holy cow. How could that ever be controversial? Not Jesus. Hello. The Pope's not Jesus. Okay. But you know what? Again, truth doesn't care about your feelings. And you know what? It would be unloving. It would be unloving if I said that the Pope was perfect, because I'd be lying to you. And if you accepted that like it was, you're accepting a lie. You're accepting something that's unloving. See, so once we like get a grasp of love, we can understand, one, why Christians are perceived the way they are, right? Like why people judge us and look at us as hypocrites because they're comparing us to God because we're representative of God, instead of them digging into their relationship with God and then realizing exactly what you realized about pastors. Wow, they're imperfect too. And so the result of that is much like what you and I said. Man, the most genuine people I've found have been in Bible groups. We cry together. We pray together. We eat together. There's a sense of camaraderie. Brothers and sisters oriented towards one common goal, and that is to glorify Christ in our lives. And we have brothers that are falling. And fortunately, there's close ones next to us that bring us back up, encourage us, continue to fight the good fight. And I'm sure that there's churches out there that are like, oh, look at you. You're not even welcome here. Legalism. But quit comparing people to God, because people are not God. They're servants of God. They're representatives of God. Because the moment that you start doing that, then you feel unworthy to even have a relationship with them. Is that a wrap? Are we, how far in are we? We're like 46 minutes. Do you feel like we covered this topic well?
Yeah, I think we kind of got sidetracked every now and again, but that's normal for us.
Normal for us or normal for me?
you.
Yeah.
I just didn't want to.
Well, you know, the other thing is like, I'm having so many, as we're discussing, I'm having so many deep thoughts, and I start going down a trail, and I believe that it's because that trail needs to be explored a little bit. Now, this is the greatest thing about long form content, is that exploring that trail a little bit, I can bring it back in and bring it back to the foundation of the conversation. Am I always great at that? Do I always do that? No, but that is like typically my goal when I do communicate things, is to try and like bring that back in, because man, I just said something that was a little bit controversial, a little bit harsh. I better rein that in and bring it back to this and why I would say that. Maybe some would say, well, that's an over explanation. Maybe so. But you know what? It wouldn't be a podcast if there wasn't, you know, these rabbit trails that happen. I listen to multitudes of podcasts. The only time that you really don't get that is when there's a story being told. Like, it's hard if you were interviewing me about my testimony, to get sidetracked from the testimony itself. I know the common goal of it. Well, the common goal of this is an expression of ideas to pursue the truth, to discover it and find it. And so, yeah, there's going to be rabbit trails. Yeah, there's going to be times when it's like, oh, he's a little off topic. But there's a lot of complexity to these conversations. If you want clear cut, dry, and straight and to the point, don't read the Old Testament.
That takes patience.
Exactly. Well, these conversations take patience. I mean, that probably sounds totally off. Like I just made a comparison between this and the Old Testament. Absolutely not. No, absolutely not. I'm just saying that takes patience, but also like going through the flows of a conversation.
You get the whole
it
detail.
requires patience as well, you know, to get the details, to understand, well, why would that be said? And then also that like gives so many opportunities in the future of different conversations to have, you know. So Anything else you want to say, Ryan? Anything else you want to tell the world?
Nope. I can't think of it anyways.
I just think it's so funny when we started this, man. It's just crazy. Like, I feel so comfortable now. But okay, I'm going to tell you guys all these things. You know, and I'm just like,
I didn't do that today.
I know. It's kind of nice, dude. You weren't shaking my cameras or floors or, you know, letting the cats under the house know that there's people up here. But again, I appreciate all the listeners for listening to the Pursuing Truth podcast. I hope that you discovered some things through this conversation today. Like we talked about, I know that it can be a little bit challenging to sit here and listen to everything kind of play out, but I hope that it's interesting. And if you did learn something today from the episode, leave a comment. Let us know what you learned. Shoot me an email if you have questions or if you want to challenge some of the thoughts that I shared today on the episode. Send me an email. Like, it's open. I'm not kidding. I want to hear it. And leave a podcast rating and review over on Spotify and Apple Podcast. It's really important that you do that because that's how the podcast is distributed to more people. If you found this valuable, it's important that you do that. Subscribe on YouTube. Follow me and Ryan over on TikTok. Links will be in the bottom of the description, and like the Facebook page. That way you can watch the episodes there too. You guys have a great rest of your week. God bless, and I will see you guys next time.